Hi, everybody. I'm doing day 6 of the vacation. I believe this should be the 6th log. If not, then I can't count, and I'll need to work on that. Just before I get into the whole day, I just wanted to talk to a few points about London. Specifically, London, a little bit outside of England, but mostly London and its fast-paced lifestyle. Some of the things that people seem to get wrong, and the first thing that I think I've mentioned a few of these things over a few of the logs. The first thing that will hit you when you come here is the incredibly fast-paced lifestyle. Basically, like I've said in the past, I've lived in Toronto. I've hung out in the downtown core countless times. I'm used to it. It's no surprise to me. I know what to expect for the most part. But the minute I come here, it's like a completely different world. Cars are just moving on almost any light, and that goes double for the people, the pedestrians. Chris and I are standing there at a red light, red walk sign, meaning don't walk. We're sitting waiting for the green. 20 people just walk past us against it and walk across the road, and we're like, okay, I guess lights don't mean anything, but I told the story to a couple of people. Maybe I briefly mentioned it in the log before, how we actually watched a double-decker bus make it's got to be at least a 60, 70 kilometer, 90-degree turn off one of the roads into an even smaller road that seemed like the size of 2 beds put together. Just boom, you'd expect that thing to go flying, but nope. And it's zooming past things that are like barely this much room. And I mean, this is understandable. London was built with very small roads. It was built a long time ago. It's one of the oldest cities on the map. So obviously roads weren't designed with the future in mind, 4, 6 lane. This place could use 6-lane roads heavily. And that's probably why Toronto and some of the, other busier places benefit a little bit better. But, finding out people don't really pay attention to the road, the road signs, but I guess this is what they're used to. And I only found out a couple of days ago that London itself is about 8 million people. I think our hometown of Brampton has just over 3. I'd have to check the recent current population, maybe 4. But, barely half of that just in London, downtown London. This is crazy. The other thing that I've noticed is that being Canadian, we are, for the most part, generally friendly. Hi, hey, how's it going today? All right, have a great shift, and talk to you later. I've even thrown the British cheers at the end, kind of lately. Maybe I'm turning British, I don't know. But I've noticed maybe, let's say 60% of the people that I've encountered thus far either look at you weird when you give these end of sentence cheers or gratuities and stuff. They look at you weird, or they just say okay. So I'm not gonna go all out and say Brits are unfriendly, but I don't think they're used to the whole friendliness, the conversation. There's a word I'm slipping my mind, but anyway. I think they just want the business and they want you to move on, get to the next thing. Everything points towards fast, like a very fast conveyor belt. They want you to move here, get your thing, go here, pay, go there. Don't say hi, bye, or whatever. Just get your stuff, move to the next person. It's one big machine. I guess that's the whole theme here. It's one big machine and it moves very fast. And being an outsider, I see this very heavily. They're used to it every day. They're used to it. Some of the other things I've noticed, there is a ton of bikes. And I found out a secret reason for that, which I'll get to in a minute. But I've seen a lot of bikes. I've seen a lot of those handled little scooters. And I'm talking like not kids on them. I'm talking like fully grown adults in suits, ties, and a swing bag around their shoulder, and shooting down the street at full speed on a scooter. I've seen like the bike scene yesterday was interesting. I looked out the window, just out of the window of this hotel room. Down there, 2 lanes, one way for each direction. Buses parked, picking up people, so it's obviously blocking the thing. Right behind it, one biker stops. Another one, another one, another one. They don't know each other. After about 2 minutes, the bus is still finishing picking up people, and there is about 8 or 9 bikers, bicycles, not motorbikes, bicycles, just sitting there, kind of curved with one foot propped on the ground, like a kickstand, just waiting for the bike to move on so they can all go to work or wherever they're going. Part of the morning rat race for London. Biking is serious here, and we found out why. Apparently, there is an 11-pound automobile tax per day. If you own a vehicle and drive in London, you pay 11 pounds per day. Do the math. Christ, in Canadian dollars, that would be like almost $20 a day. It's a dissuasion from having a vehicle, I guess. They want to cut down on the number of vehicles, get you to use bikes. I've seen a lot of bike stores, and Jesus, if I ever go into the bike business, I'm moving here to make a killing. Bike stores, places selling scooters and whatnot. Walking, oh wow, just when Chris and I walked to get the morning coffee down the road, wow, we are in a sea of people. I've walked to work down Queen Street for many years. I've barely passed 2 or 3 people. I've been on Main Street in the morning in Brampton. It's not even a quarter that busy. But just walking down this street, and it is not a main street. Where this hotel is not a main street. A sea of people. At the very quietest, a pond of people. It is crazy. But the people that do drive here, they're going to pay the 11-pound per day tax, and they have to drive nuts. They have to drive very fast. They have to be very quick reaction on the brakes. I haven't seen, thankfully, any accidents yet. Knock on whatever this is. But I hope I don't see anything like that. But I can't imagine it not happening with the craziness of the pedestrians, the number of pedestrians and bikers, to the number of crazy vehicles. Speaking to the vehicles, you see a noticeable difference in the type of vehicles here. You're not going to find too many Ford. I've seen 1 or 2, but not many Ford vehicles. No Dodges. Forget about muscle cars and stuff like that. Even stuff like my sister's Ford Explorer. Forget seeing something like that. Every car is a small compact car. I've seen Citroens, Clios. I've surprisingly seen a large number of Porsches. I guess because it's more common in Europe, coming from this side where they're built. So yeah, I've seen a lot of Porsches. But the one vehicle we've seen absolutely the most, this is like the Sunfire of 2019, Toyota Prius. Every second car is a Toyota Prius. But for the most part, every car is a compact car. I haven't seen one single minivan. Now, in contrast, today we went to the other side. We took a long train ride to Kent to go visit the Chislehurst Caves. Complete and total contrast to loud, fast, bustling downtown London. This is like quieter than Northern Aurelia. And most of you know Aurelia is a retirement, camping, fishing town up north, just north of Barrie. It takes about 2 hours to get there. I go camping there almost every year. It is absolutely beautiful. And this was quieter than that. Now, remember what I just said a few minutes ago about 8 million people and the rat race and all the fast bustling cars and buses? My God, what a contrast. We could hear the birds singing and not much else. So It was absolutely beautiful. Lots of gorgeous cottages and small houses. We saw an apartment building up in there, and it looked like more of a big luxury house that a Hollywood star would have. A lot of glass windows, and every second car was like a Porsche or something. But I did see a couple of Range Rovers out there, and I guess that makes sense because out that far from London, the cars can afford to be a little bigger. Um, the final thing that I will say before I get into the day is Canadians. The reaction when people find out we're Canadian. The first few days we didn't say much about it, but now it's gotten to the point where I can actually pretty much, using a little charm, get them to start talking to me when I start mentioning, don't worry, I'm not American. They find out you're Canadian, they want to know a little bit more. I've found a few people that are heading to Canada this summer for vacation from here. It gets a good conversation going, bridges a little bit of the gap. They don't seem to like Americans. I don't know what it is, but they don't like Americans. The best thing I've heard in a week here, well, not a week, but almost a week. The best thing I have heard is that the Americans usually tip well, but that's the best thing I've heard. Almost every person, save maybe a couple, they all love Canadians. So as soon as they find out you're Canadian, they love you. Or at the very least, they're willing to open a dialogue with you more. Anyways, before this gets too long, on with the day. Today we got to see I'm just going to go ahead and say, the best thing on this vacation. And the one thing I was totally waiting for, the Chislehurst Caves. You have to take about a half-hour train east of here to a town called Chislehurst. It's in the county of Kent. Underneath the town are 22 miles of cavern tunnels. It shouldn't be called cavern because cavern is created by water. This was never. This is closer to mines. I read somewhere this should have originally been called the Chislehurst Mines, but that's a side thing. Basically, Chislehurst Caves, way back in 1666, after the Great Fire, they dug out a lot of the tunnels under there for the fresh chalk. They're looking for the softer chalk beds, the layers under the earth. Chalk was used in a lot of the reparations and whatnot. So you got to figure that was a lot of reparations to make after that, after most of London was burned to a crisp. So there was a lot of tunnels. Also, they've connected with a lot of tunnels that the Romans built a long time ago. So the Romans had their own tunnels down there. Add to that the Druids. The Druids had tunnels down there with a lot of evidence that there was human sacrifices. So there's that. There's also Saxon tunnels. And the major historic thing to take away from this is that it was used during World War II as an air raid shelter when the Luftwaffe was bombing. So the tunnels are massive, but they were also an absolute city for a time. I'm now reading the memoirs of a young girl who spent the better part of 4 years of her life back around the early 1940s, because she was in and out of there every time, there was a raid. And raids, obviously, the threat lasted for weeks, months at a time, so she spent the better part of 4 years down there. There was at any given time about 250 to 300 people down there. Again, we're talking underground in dark tunnels. Imagine that. There was electricity. It was sparse, but there was. Basically, this community down there had movie theater. Well, maybe not movie. I did hear the word theaters, and I keep attributing that to stage plays. And I did read article documents that there was actual plays and shows put on by the community. Chris seems to think maybe old projector movies, which were kind of around in that time. I don't know if a small town like Chislehurst would have had it, but regardless, they had their own pub down there, 2 theaters, A library, a medical area, pretty much almost anything you can think of. Kids, elderly, adults. Um, it was basically a whole small city down there while the bombing was going on. But of course, you got to figure it was a lot of time underground, and every time that the air raids were signaled in, these people had to douse all the light because there are air ventilations, and they were worried back in those days that Germans flying overhead might see some dim lights down below, radio back. Recon planes may have, warned back, hey, I've seen lights down there. There's probably people. It'd be an immediate target. So every time there was a bombing, they had to turn off the lights. So imagine kids and people sitting in perpetual darkness in cold, damp caves. Not a very nice thought when we think of the nice luxury we live in now. But it was incredible to explore these tunnels. We explored, we were told, roughly about a mile out of the 22. And from what we saw when we got in there, every few feet there's dark tunnels you can't see very far into, but they shoot off in all kinds of maze-like directions. Yes, it would be way too easy to get lost in there. I wasn't going to get lost in there. I'm sitting there holding an oil lantern for the most part of it. They gave all the adults oil lanterns. There were kids on the tour. One of the interesting things they did do, they took us halfway in, and they basically took away our lanterns, told us to, get a good seat against the wall or lie up against the wall, and we're going to go into perpetual darkness. And the tour guide was walking away around the corner, and he was going to hit a sheet of metal to make bomb raid sounds, the kind of simulated sounds the people would have heard when they were sitting there in the darkness alone. So there we were. He took away our lanterns and he walked away, and there we were. And when you think of darkness, you think, yeah, you turn off the light at night and your eyes will adjust. When you're underground that far in a dark cave, your eyes do not adjust. It stays pitch black. I had Chris beside me. I had another person. I don't know who it was. I couldn't even tell you, guy or girl. But I had a whole bunch of people on this side too. I wasn't scared, but you're apprehensive. Because after a few minutes, then he hits the sheet metal to make the bombing sounds. And they're loud. And I could see kids back in those days being absolutely terrified. If that was a real air raid, I would probably really be terrified even at my age. So it was quite the experience to feel. Especially when you figure, and this is the part I was hoping to get to, those caves are actually haunted. There is a lot of reported and evidence of Druid sacrifices. And from the evidence, it didn't matter if you were old, kids, babies, whatnot, were sacrificed. There's a lot of cave drawings and articles and whatnot, proof of it. Looks like a lot of cuts into the wall look like small altars with little areas for what might have maybe contained blood after the sacrifice. I can't speculate to that. But basically, when you think of all the people that might have been, down there, it's not hard to imagine a lot of, roaming spirits down there. I remember the tour guide, I asked him after everybody had passed on and Chris and I were alone talking to him. I said to him, so what have you really seen down here? And he kind of looked around just to make sure the last of the kids and the parents had walked away. He said he does maintenance down there for, most of the time, 8-9 hours a day. And alone, I guess, because there's preservant, a special spray that you have to put on a lot of the mannequins and the beds and stuff to preserve it from the dampness down there. Obviously, electrical work if any needs it, and you have to check on all the stuff. He does a lot of maintenance work down there, alone. So picture that, alone in those caves. And if you want to see pictures of it, I posted it on my Facebook. I'm pretty sure not one person is going to tell me that they would like that task. Sometimes, he said his longest shift actually was about 13 hours. And he said, oftentimes when you're down there for long hours, you kind of have to take a sanity break and come up for a spot of tea. That's what he told me. And I could see that, because I think being down there alone, I'd be looking over my shoulder at every little crack, every little bang, every little sound of a flutter. And with 22 miles of caves, sound travels. It travels. And he said, he says, on very rare occasions over the years, he swears he has heard what sounded like children's giggling. But, and he was being serious. He would have, if this was a joke or, just made to scare us, he would have told us with all the parents and kids around on the regular tour. I actually believe him, but he also did admit that when you're down there for long hours at a time, your mind will play tricks on you, and it's believable that, you might hear something and it's exaggerated in your head. So he can't confirm anything, but he thinks he's heard kids giggling. Makes it a little more memorable when I tell you I was reading the memoirs of one of the children that lived down there, and she read that they used to go off into the druid section and play kissing games and stuff when she was like 10, 11, 12 years old. So you imagine kids for years down there playing either hide and seek or whatever the hell they play. Alone down there, you might imagine anything. Aside from that, the tunnels were incredible, but the tour went way too quick. We did see the hospital that was down there, and yes, someone actually gave birth to a child down there. It was during a period of bombing. They tried to call the hospital from the closest town. It couldn't get there safely. They gave birth in the cave. They gave the child the name Kavina. Cavena. Kavina. In later years, she changed her name to Rose and kept Kavina as a middle name. But a child was actually given birth and raised there. She's still alive. She's 77 years old. She's alive and well. And periodically, from time to time, when they do anniversaries and stuff, she actually comes back and visits the cave. So that's very nice. I have read about 2 children's deaths down there. I can't specify to it because it's from the memoirs, and they weren't going to be specific. So it can be a scary, deadly place down there, but it was incredible to go through them. Moving on after that, we took a long walk up a very sharp inclined road to a pub that opened in 1783 called the Imperial Arms. The food was incredible. I had broccoli and cheese soup. It was broccoli and Stilton, as I'm told. It's a type of cheese. What did you have?
The pulled pork.
Pulled pork.
Sandwich and a Guinness.
And a Guinness. Of course, a Guinness. In honor for Mom, I had a gin and tonic. It was very good. And it was just great being in this, having the local cuisine in this very old, hundreds of years old pub out in the country, the English countryside. It was great. I can't tell you what a great feeling and what a personally rewarding experience it was today to experience the caves, the pub. On the way back to the station, we talked to a nice lady sitting there waiting for her train. And then we headed back to the city. In the evening, I felt like resting up. I didn't sleep very well last night, so kind of came back, had a little me time here, watched some stuff on my tablet, washed up, refreshed myself, changed clothes, and then Chris and I went out to we tried to go back to the Princess of Wales pub in town for dinner, for fish and chips. But due to short staffness, they were told to close early and help out with the bar portion downstairs. So in short, we didn't get in. So going up the street, we saw this little Italian eatery called Bella Italia. We went in, got a seat, and we had some really nice Italian food, pasta, and we had some chicken wings in what kind of dressing?
Balsamic.
A nice balsamic sauce to dip it in. Some dough swirls that are like garlic bread, but kind of doughier or whatever. Anyway, it was really good. We had a great day. The experiences I wouldn't trade for the world. This video is going 25 minutes, so I've made some points about London. I've given you some insight into that, and I've talked about the Chislehurst Caves, which every day we've seen something incredible. But for me, personally speaking, this was the highlight for me. This is what I knew I wanted to see the most. The only disappointment was that the tour only lasted about 50 minutes. I would have liked to go a little deeper into the caves, not alone, of course, but I would have liked to see some of the other tunnels and whatnot, but it was not to be. But I did get to talk with a lot of the people there, get a lot of the history, and absorb a lot of culture. And I got to bring back some really, really cool souvenirs, which if you want, I will mention more. Some wartime memorials and stuff like that, which are absolutely incredible because you know me, I love historic stuff like that. So anyways, thanks for watching. Have a great night. God bless and cheers.